Hello and welcome back to The Shadower. I know it's been a long time, but I'm not letting this channel die already. It's just been a little difficult finding more appointments, but there'll be more coming soon. But today I thought I would talk about all of the many jobs that I've worked. Now, I'm only 24, but I have worked more than a dozen jobs since I graduated high school. But we're going to start a little further back than that. So back in 2009, I was 15. I was about to start high school, but during the summer I started my first job, basically just working for my dad. Now, he worked in a big office building. Here's a picture of it right here. So this building was pretty cool because my family basically owned it. So there were a few businesses that actually went on in here, and I was hired on to, it was an engineering office, but I was mostly just a helper monkey. I was 15, I didn't know what I was doing, and I just, for the most part, I just like to do maintenance stuff, like taking out the trash and, doing whatever kind of extra jobs that would come up. So, there wasn't a whole lot to this job, but, as a first job, working for your dad, I didn't even have any other way of getting there except for to ride with him, and he liked to go in super early, so I would usually have to wake up at like 3 or 4 in the morning just to be able to go. And throughout the whole summer, I maybe made like $500 or $600 total. So it wasn't super crazy. But fast forward into high school. So while I was in, I think, senior year, so in late 2011, someone in my neighborhood quit their job, and then they referred me to go fill their place at a sushi bar. Now, it was basically just bussing tables and so my whole schedule is just to be working Saturday nights. So 4 hours a week was my whole schedule. But it didn't matter much because I went in on like a Wednesday to do training, and then I worked that Saturday, and then I worked the Saturday after that, and then the Saturday after that I had a school thing, so I had to miss work and I had to call in and have somebody else cover it. And then the Saturday after that I was about to go in, and they called me and they're like, hey, we were having some complaints about your performance, so we got to let you go. And I'm like, okay, I was just starting to get the hang of it, but so that was all the jobs I had during high school, not much. Then after I graduated, probably 4 or 5 months after I graduated in 2012, there was a guy in my neighborhood who worked in an engineering office. We talk about engineering offices a lot, but this was like a different kind. It was like water engineering, and it was an actual company, not just some small 2-person thing. So he got me a job. It was basically like an internship. I was, again, more like a helper monkey. It wasn't so much like working for my dad where I did general maintenance stuff, but this place I actually did a lot of the stuff that the actual engineers just didn't have time to do. Usually like manage their files and, run little errands for everybody. And up until then, I never really made too much money, but this felt like my first actual job. I still wasn't even working full time. It was like 20 hours a week in the office, but I was making like $11 an hour, which was a lot for me right out of high school. But after about 6 months, I kind of just had a bunch of life drama and stuff going on, and this place kind of ran out of stuff for me to do, and I decided to leave, and I moved somewhere else. So I was living in another place, and then my uncle was saying that he was like, hey, come work for me. But this uncle of mine can be very unpredictable, and you never know how long the job is going to last, which it only lasted maybe a few weeks. He had this house that he wanted to turn into his office, and so I would go in there, and he does like architecture stuff. So I did dabble a little bit in architecture, but for the most part, we were just kind of like trying to renovate this house, turn it into something nice. And you can actually see back there, there's a wooden fence, and me and my cousin actually built that fence. That was just part of the job. But when that didn't work, my dad called me again, and he was like, "Hey, come work for me." And he worked in, so he had moved offices because that other family office had been sold. And so I go over and I ride my bike like 7 miles each way to get to this place. Like, before this, I would usually ride my bike, take public transit, ride the train, but there wasn't any good train route to this place. And so I ended up just biking 7 miles each way for like the whole summer. So this was the summer of 2013 that I was doing this. But, you know, after a while biking that much, I mean, making like $8 an hour or something like that wasn't too great. And yeah, I felt like I wasn't really being all that helpful working for my dad because I didn't really know much about it. So I was applying for jobs around the area, and I got a job at a retail store called Shopko. It's kind of like Walmart or Target. And yeah, I was just a cashier. This was not the most fun job. It was very tedious. You stand at a register. I mean, everybody basically knows how it goes. The problem I have with jobs like this is that you're being paid for your time, and no matter how good you do, it's like there's no way you can really stand out. Like, your boss usually isn't going to be like, "Wow, you're cashiering really well, we're going to give you a promotion or something." No, it's like you get a promotion once you've worked there for a long time, and you just got to draw it out. But I only had to ride my bike maybe like 2 or 3 miles each way to get to this place. But it was in like a weird or bad area or something where cars just weren't paying attention. So there were quite a few times where I almost got hit. And there was one day where I came like really close to almost being hit by a car who was like trying to race a red light. I was just waiting at the corner. I look up, see, oh, the light says I can go. So I start going, and then here comes a car slamming on its brakes, trying not to hit me, and like stops in the middle of the intersection, and that freaked me out. And I just went to work that day, gave him my notice, and then I was done with that. But luckily, where I was living at the time was right across the street from the community college. Now I tried taking a few classes at this community college. I wasn't super invested into it, but there was a gym, they call it like the Lifetime Activity Center, and I applied there and I got in. And this was actually one of the most enjoyable jobs I've ever had. I mean, it was probably the lowest paying. I think it was paying like $7.50 an hour. So I've only gotten down since I was at the engineering office. But yeah, basically I would just sit at the front desk, greet people as they came in, made sure people were paying, or made sure people had their membership as they came in. And I mean, it was for a college, so it was all people around my age. You get to know a lot of regulars. And or I would hang out in the weight rooms, just change the radio or the TV stations if people asked about it, or just make sure people aren't breaking rules or, you know, causing any damages. So I mean, it was super easy. You just get to chill out and socialize with people, hang out at the gym without the workout part, and then you just kind of clean up and close afterwards. So honestly, that was, you know, like I said, that's one of the most enjoyable jobs I've had, just because, you know, you get to talk to and meet people. Most of my jobs have been pretty antisocial. So I worked there through the winter into 2014, and then I move again the spring of 2014, and I became a janitor at the university. So now again I'm working for a school which I don't even go to, And I wasn't really cleaning like classrooms and stuff. I was more cleaning just a couple random office buildings. I don't even know what half of them were used for, but here's a picture of two of them. And fun fact, if you've ever seen the movie SLC Punk, this white building on the right is actually in that movie. And this scene right here, you can see it in the background. But so me and this other guy were partners, and we would go around and, do general cleaning stuff, just take out trash, vacuum, clean bathrooms and stuff. But we had 4 hours to clean these 4 buildings every single day, and it would only ever take us 2 hours. And so most of the time I would just like take a nap in that in that white building right there. I mean, some days were different than others, but yeah, we would just kind of chill out and have not much else to do. I actually stayed there for about 9 months, which was the longest I'd ever held a job. I think I was like 20 at the time. And then after a while I was like, you know what, I kind of want to move on to bigger, better things. So I left. I told them I was going to go to school, but I don't think I ever really got that into it. But a couple weeks after I left, they called me back and they were like, hey, we've got another opening if you want to work like a night shift. Because the other one I was working like 6 to 10 a.m., which is kind of rough. I don't really like being a morning person too much, but this one was like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'm not doing anything right now. So I got hired on. And when I was working the first janitor position, I didn't mind most of it, but cleaning the bathrooms was my least favorite part. And then I get hired into this building, and the whole job was just cleaning bathrooms. Like, that was my position, was just the bathroom cleaner person. And I'm not even good at cleaning bathrooms. Like, my rule when cleaning is like, if it looks clean, it is clean, which they didn't really appreciate that too much. And so, yeah, it was kind of just like slacking off, not doing super great. And after about a month, I eventually just left. So luckily I had a friend in the neighborhood I lived at during the time, and I actually did make a video about this one where he hired me on to help him with landscaping. Now for this time it was like spring, and he was hiring me to do like yard cleanup stuff, like getting ready to start mowing lawns. I mowed lawns a little bit, but it was a very like part-time, not a serious job kind of thing. So I'm looking around, and then I find this ad for tech support for an internet company. And if you've ever complained about having bad tech support when you're trying to get your internet figured out, it might just be because they're terrible at training their employees. So I got hired onto this place. It was like a mass hiring or something, because I got hired on with like 15 other people, which, if you ever want a job where you're treated like an individual and not like just a number in a group, don't fall for these mass hiring things, because yeah, it kind of sucks. So they throw us all into a room, and it was like a full week of training, like no work at all. You're just like sitting in basically a classroom, just going through online courses and taking tests and stuff, and they're teaching you all about what you're supposed to do and how to solve issues. And then after that they just immediately put you on the phone, and I was like, well, can't I watch somebody else work for a little while before I start trying it myself? And they're like, oh no, that's against the rules. And I'm like, what is wrong with this place? So like day one of putting me on the phones, like I was just doing horribly. Like it was one of the worst days of my life, because people call in and it's like, all right, it's time for you to solve their problem, and then they tell you their problem and you're like, I barely know anything about this stuff. I don't know how to help you. And if you ever don't know the answer to something, it looks terrible because you're the one that's expected to be the expert. So then I came back the next day, and I answered calls some more, and that was just it. Like even in the second day, I was like avoiding taking calls at all costs. And after that, I just said, I'm leaving. This is terrible. It also didn't help that I had a family member die on my first day of work, so that kind of made it hard to enjoy being there at all. So yeah, that was like a week and a half that I really wish I could take back. So then I just went back with my friend again, mowing lawns, and then I actually worked with him for most of the summer, and which was good because he didn't have any other help. And so it was mostly just me and him mowing a ton of lawns, and we actually did a pretty good job. But the end of the summer, I had to move back in with my parents, and I don't know if this really counts as a job, but at one point I had reached out to a temp agency. Now, if you've ever worked with a temp place, basically you give them your resume, fill out application, and then they will send out your resume to a bunch of places, and try and find you a job. And they sent me to this place. It was like a rental company where it was like an event setup company where people would hire them to bring in like tables and chairs and stuff. And so I only worked at this job for one day because they told us to show up at 7, and so I did. And then like all of us newbies show up there at 7, and we're all just like standing in a group. And they're like, well, the truck drivers don't show up till 8, so you're just gonna have to stand around and wait until then. And we're like, okay, that's great. And so then at 8, like all the drivers, they show up. They all have events they've got to go to, and so they're like, all right, I'll take this many people. And then another driver's like, all right, I'll take this group of people. And then after all the trucks were full and taken care of, then I was one of like 3 or 4 people left over. And they're like, well, we don't really know what to give to you, so why don't you just sweep around here, around the warehouse? And I was like, what? So I don't even get to do the job? And after that I was like, yeah, I'm not going back. This is stupid. That's another one where you just feel like a number, where you're hired en masse. So so at this point I was really looking for a data entry kind of job because I'm really fast at typing. So I applied and interviewed at a bunch of different just data entry places, and I ended up getting found by this web design company who wanted me to do SEO. Now this company, I might actually go make a video there. They're really cool people. It was like a startup company. So they do web design, and they wanted me to help with their search engine optimization, which was a lot of basic data entry stuff. And I mean, the whole job was just so strange and complicated. I have no idea what I was doing, but I was just following the instructions, and they were happy with it, so I guess that's all that mattered. So yeah, it was a pretty cool place. Again, I was back to riding my bike to work, and taking the train, and it started to get close to winter, and I was like, I don't know how well this is going to go over biking through the winter. But then I got a call from another place I had applied at like months before. So I was working at the web design company for 2 months, and then I get a call from this place that I interviewed with like before I even started this job, and it was for a nighttime security company. And they were just like, hey, are you still interested in a job? And I was like, well, that depends. So with this SEO job, with the data entry stuff, towards the end of like 2 months, I was kind of running out of stuff to do, which, I mean, wasn't really a bad thing. Like, the company themselves were just like, man, you finished stuff so much faster than the last guy. We don't even know what to give you. Like, so that was pretty interesting. So I told them the situation. I'm like, well, this nighttime company is offering me a spot to be paid more, and I'd have something to do, and I've always kind of wanted to work a night job, and they were understanding. They're like, oh yeah, that's fine. We don't really know how to utilize you anymore because you've pretty much done everything we've given you. And so I left and I went and started working at a security company. Shortly after I left the web design company, they moved into this other building. So if I go and make a video about them, it'll be here. Hopefully in the next few months at least. So then I get into security company 1, which I talked about in the video where, working graveyard security, where just in a room with a group of people, staying up all night. As alarms would come in, you would answer them. You would just check out what the camera was seeing, and then close it out with whatever was going on. And I would recommend this kind of job for those of you who just like to chill out, sit at a computer all night. It's a fairly easy job for the most part. The only part that takes some getting used to is like calling the police. You have to be pretty professional when you're talking to, trying to report stuff and then filing police reports and all that kind of thing. There's a whole process that they train you on, but then, like I said in the other video, I won't go into too much detail about what this job was like because I have that other video about everything about it. So then some of my friends that were working here, they didn't like how it was run, so they went and started their own thing, doing the exact same thing. Then they hired me on, and so this is me working there. So this was even more laid back because I was the only one working there and there wasn't very much to do at the time because it was just a startup. And I worked there for 1.5 years. And working by yourself at night for 10, 12-hour shifts 4 times a week, it just kind of makes you go crazy after a while. So at one point I did start working with my landscaping friend again, just part-time, just going mowing with him once a week just to see the sun a little bit. But trying to manage the schedule of being a night person and then being a day person once a week was just not very fun. And so you find ways to cope with working nights all the time. And then after 1.5 years of working these night shifts, I make one mistake and then they get rid of me. And so it was literally one night they got rid of me. I was at work, they came in, they fired me, and then that night I texted my dad. I was like, hey, you need anybody to work for you? Because I know he had been trying to convince me to go work for him again, and he's like, yeah, sure, start tomorrow. And since then I've been working for my dad again, but this time I'm actually doing drafting and engineering and going to job sites, doing a lot more than I ever have while working for him. It feels like an actual job now, kind of. And it was only supposed to be a temporary thing while I found something else, but I've been there for almost 1 year because I'm just so tired of looking for new jobs at this point, and I know how crappy so many types of jobs are. But as of yesterday, my job has actually moved here. So, took my computer home, and now I'm a shut-in. I hope I don't turn into a hermit working here. So, that's all the jobs I've worked at. I think that adds up to 16 or 17 technically, if you include everything. I don't know that I'll be doing this forever. I hope I'm not. It's not my favorite thing to do. I don't hate it. It's just kind of something to do. Even my dad says, I never thought I would be doing this forever, but the money's really good, so you just keep getting pulled back into it. And I feel the same way. It's kind of hard for me to find anything being paid better than I am right now. But the reason I'm doing this shadower channel is to sort of get out there and see what other jobs there are. I've worked 15 different jobs. Well, probably only 10 different types of jobs. And even then, that's only scratching the surface of how much is out there. And most of my jobs I've gotten were just entry level, or I knew somebody in the company, and that's what got me in. And I expect I'll probably work a bunch more jobs. I tend to spend a lot more time at each one at this point. Yeah, hopefully I can get some more good videos in the future, and maybe I can even help somebody else find out what they want to do. So that's all for this video. Hopefully the next one will be me going to an actual job. So thanks for watching.